Okay, so what do we need to build a dashboard? Well, as I said, it is a set of interactive plots, so it's going to be quite similar to the things we looked at last time. Last week we looked at interactive examples, and they each consisted of two basic components. In fact, like most of the visualizations, you have the import statements and the code to read in the data, and then you have the code which adapts the data, perhaps maybe a selection of some of the columns, and then creates a chart. In today's lecture, we're going to need those two bits, but we need them slightly modified. So we have the import statements and the code to read in the data is exactly the same. We then have a function which adapts the data as required and creates a chart. So this is like taking what we did last week and putting it inside a function, inside a Python function. And then finally, you have a bit of controlling code that builds the web page. Okay, so it's very similar to last week's, just we've got this extra bit at the bottom, and the bit that builds the chart is put into a function, because we have to keep going to the function. Every time we want to interact with the widgets, we keep going to the function to get another version of the chart. So the big difference, as I say, is now that we create this chart inside a function, and as I said, the reason is that the chart changes according to what the widgets are set to. So if we've got a widget that does the date range, then we'll get a chart that's adapted according to that date range. The controlling code then, the stuff that builds the page, is going to pass the values from the widgets, so perhaps a range of dates, into the function, and the function will construct the chart accordingly. So let's have a look at an example. So first of all, in today's examples, the code, the input code and the data reading code is pretty much the same as all the other lectures, except that there's a couple of minor differences. This week we're using Panel. Panel is going to be the library that creates our dashboard, and so you need to import it, and you need to do pn.extension to make it work. In terms of the bit to create the plot, this is almost exactly the same as something we did last week. So this, if you remember, we used .hvplot. So we took a pandas data frame, we used data.hvplot, and then we could create a series of plots using that in the interactive lecture. So, so in this case, we're using data.hvplot. So hvplot is this HoloViz, the interactive library, and then that creates a line plot, and then we can put some parameters in. This grid, it isn't really necessary, it just makes the looks look a bit nicer. Okay, so that's the function. And notice, if we were looking at last week's lecture, this bit of code would have been all we needed to create the line plot, and then we'd use something like hvplot.show or just the name of the plot. Now we're using a function to create that, so that we can call this function over and over again, and that will that creates that line plot. At the moment, we're not changing the line plot, so the function doesn't really do anything other than just creating the plot. But soon we will be able to tell the function how to adapt the line plot. The controlling bit code is the bit that's unfamiliar, but it's not too complicated. So there's only 5 lines of code or so. So we have the title of the page in Markdown. So you can put, if you remember the Markdown syntax, then 2 hashes just indicates it's a subtitle. So title would be 1 hash and 2 is a subtitle, and the subtitle is 3 hashes, and so on. Then we decide what the page is going to show, and in this case it's going to be a row of elements, where in this case we're just showing the title first, and then the next thing in the row is the plot. So what we do when we create these rows is decide what things are going on the row on our page. So in this case, it'll be the title on the left, and then the plot on the right. And then finally, we just need to make the row servable so that it can run on a website. So that's a bit of standard code. So although that looks very unfamiliar so far, that's all that code does. Okay. I think we can have a look at that actually running. So if I go to Jupyter, open this one up, there's my 3 elements, and most of my examples are going to be like this. I'll have 3 elements. So there's the controlling code, the import code. That just reads in the data as usual. There's this function that won't have any output. If I just run that cell, nothing's going to happen. It's just creating that function. And then when I run it, that then creates this interactive plot. And this is no different to any of the interactive plots we saw last week. So I've got this clickable legend that I can click on, and I can zoom in to data, and I can hover over things and so on. Okay, so at the moment that's just a plot that appears. Let's reset that. A plot that appears on the page in the Jupyter notebook. Okay, and you can see just while I remember the row consists of that title. That's the left-hand item in the row, and then the plot, which is the right-hand item in the row. And so we can create these rows with different bits on. They can have a bit of text and a plot and maybe another plot and so on. Okay, let's finish the video there and then move on to the next example.